我好記得我第一次去 Calgary， 我哋去BEMC。
I still vividly remember the first time that we went to Calgary. Like
嗰次咧，我哋未有細路，所以仲係師母兩個去。
So we went, before we even had kids. So I went with Mrs. Young.
我哋好記得，當我哋揸架車沿住個山周圍轉上去嘅時候。
So I remember that, we follow the path, like going up to the mountain.
有一個情景咧，好吸引住我。
And a particular image, really attracted me.
你想象一下咧，嗰日個山頂裏邊咧有啲冰啊，有啲雪，而嗰日好好天氣，陽光曬喺啲冰度反射，嗰個情景好靚。
So I remember such a beautiful scene. It was a sunny day. There was snow, like ice on top of the mountain, and with the sun's reflection, it was really, beautiful and memorable.
心裏邊咧自然唱起一首嘅詩歌。
And a song rose up from the bottom of my heart.
知唔知邊首啊
How great thou art.
你真偉大 How great thou art.
How great thou art. That hymn came to my mind.
所以我哋去到而家可能你哋冇機會見到佢啦，因為可能冇乜雪啊。
Perhaps now you wouldn't have a chance. There wasn't as much snow now.
或者嗰啲個冰川慢慢縮細。
Or perhaps, the glacier, were receding.
呢個山帶俾我哋有一個嘅感受，有一個嘅經歷，有一個可能係一個屬靈嘅體會。
So this particular mountain, gave us an experience, and certainly spiritually, I would take it, a deeper understanding.
如果大家記得喺舊年，我哋嘗試跟日曆嘅裏邊去睇聖經裏邊有唔同嘅植物。
So certainly, if you recall last year, we follow some of the vegetation, that were referenced, in the Bible. We follow the hanging calendar.
唔知邊一個植物對你最大感受咧
Not so sure. Is there a particular vegetation that really, gave you a deeper impression?
今年
For this year,
我嘗試同大家喺每一個月裏邊去睇聖經裏邊其中嘅一座山。
that throughout, the rest of this year, I would like every month to study with you some of the mountains that have been referenced, in the Bible.
而嗰啲山喺當時對一啲嘅人或者對一啲嘅主要嘅人物有一啲嘅屬靈嘅體會，而呢個體會可能亦都成為我哋今日喺成長路上嘅裏邊一個嘅好好嘅借鏡。
Certainly, these mountains, had been quite impressive and brought out for some of the biblical characters, how they experience life, and perhaps we could take it for our own spiritual growth.
今日我哋會睇一座山，嗰座山叫做亞拉臘山。
Today we're going to study, the mountain. It's called Mount Ararat.
如果你會留意嘅時候，喺第6章7、8開始講到挪亞嘅時代。
So certainly from the beginning of the Bible in Genesis, starting in chapter 6, it referenced a period of time regarding Noah.
當時嘅人罪惡好大，終日思想嘅盡都是惡。
Apparently at the time, most of the people then thought about, was sinful.
神叫挪亞做一隻方舟，去一家同埋一 pair 嘅牲畜進入嘅方舟裏邊。
So God commanded Noah to build an ark and for animals, all sorts of things in pairs, to go into the ark.
當 入晒去嘅時候，個雨開始落，地開始裂開。
Once they enter, Noah and his family and all the animals enter into the ark, that, the ground started to split and yeah.
喺第7章嘅時候講到，當時挪亞係600歲，喺2月17日就已經開始落雨。
Apparently the day was like the 600th year of Noah's life, and on the 17th day of the second month, that's exactly what happened when the deep burst opened up.
而喺第8章第4節裏邊講到一個轉捩嘅點，就係喺第7月17號，方舟停喺亞拉臘山上。
Another huge turning point was on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on a mountain.
所以呢會大約有5個月多嘅時間咧，喺個海裏邊咧，喺啲水裏邊咧漂流緊。
So apparently for a period of 5 months, the ark and with Noah in it, they were drifting for about 5 months.
弟兄姊妹，我唔知喺呢個情景，如果你係挪亞，你嘅內心喺個方舟裏邊，你會有乜嘢咧
？Brother and sister, I'm not so sure if you were Noah, how would you feel like, being inside the ark and been drifting?
我好相信你唔會諗住 barbecue 或者打邊爐。
And certainly you're not going to think of like, okay, let's have a barbecue or hot pot.
All you can eat. 但係你唔敢食。
And perhaps there's a lot to eat inside the ark, but you're worried, you're not going to eat.
我好相信喺呢段嘅時間，挪亞會佢諗究竟幾時啲雨停呢？
I'm sure Noah, being very thoughtful at the time, like when would the rain stop?
過咗一日
Day after a day?
過咗一個禮拜
A week?
過咗一個月
A month?
2個月
2 months?
再冇停到嘅時候，可能呢一個嘅問題變咗一個冇答案。
And the rain, wonder, when would the rain stop? And after 2 months, nothing seems to happen. And then you become worried.
喺裏邊做乜嘢咧？
What do you do inside the ark?
都唔知幾幸福啊，唔使做係咪？係咪瞓咯？你瞓得多，你啊真係唔即係你都唔想再瞓㗎啦，係咪？
Perhaps, well, maybe you said, you could take a nap, but, for that period of time, you don't want to sleep anymore.
有時唔夠瞓又好想瞓喎，有得俾你瞓你又唔走去瞓㗎喎。
So sometimes we yearn for sleep, but when you have the chance to sleep, you can't fall asleep.
你唔瞓到咁多係咪？你做乜嘢咧？
So you can't sleep that much. What do you do then?
你數動物都唔數得咁多次㗎啦，係咪？
Perhaps you can count like the number of animals, but there's how many times?
挪亞佢會諗究竟我哋嚟緊會點樣？
Noah probably, thought about, over and over again, what would the future be like?
如果啲水停嘅好啦，但係唔停咁樣點咧？
So if the water stopped, that would be better, but if it didn't, what's going to happen to him?
當挪亞咁樣諗嘅時候，佢就會繼續諗，當然啦，我好相信神啦。但係如果萬一
So Noah thought, okay, I'm going to trust in God, but how about what if?
我係咪整個嘅人生就喺呢隻方舟裏邊咧？
What if, like, if I were to spend, my whole life in the ark?
嗰啲係我嘅食物，定係我係嗰啲嘅動物嘅食物咧？
So am I like, well, I do have food in the ark, but will I one day become the food, of these animals that are in the ark?
我哋真係唔知道挪亞諗乜嘢，但係可能呢啲嘅憂慮會喺挪亞個內心裏邊出現。
A lot of unknowns, but apparently, there would be lots of these sorts of worries that show up, in Noah's mind.
但係你留意第8章第4節一個轉捩點就係方舟停喺邊度啊？
But apparently, we just read, that the ark stopped where?
一齊啊，好冇？ 亞拉臘山。
So
希望乜都唔記得，記得個山啊！
the ark came to rest on the mountain of Ararat.
喂，好似冇喐噶咯。
So apparently it didn't move anymore.
咦？又好似戳一戳喎。
Sorry, yeah.
咁同樣可能狼啊都會諗，究竟我哋停喺度，咁停幾耐咧？
So apparently Noah would think, oh, okay, well, the ark stopped, but how long are we going to be stuck in here?
而家啲船唔喐啦，停喺度，咁我哋又會點咧？
Now the ark stopped now, but
點做咧？
what's going to happen to us? What are we going to do?
如果好似神又冇出聲嘅時候，會唔會我又懷疑究竟點啊？
So God, didn't kind of reveal himself to me, and what's going to happen? And what's going to happen in the future?
可能又會進入第二個憂慮嘅情況。
Perhaps, once again to be thrown into another period of like worrying.
弟兄姊妹，呢個會唔會係好似好多人我哋嘅人生嘅裏邊遇到嘅情況？
Brother and sister, would that be similar to in our lifetime, some of the things that we would experience?
有時我哋喺人生一啲動盪啊，一啲嘅情況嘅時候，一連串嘅問題可以充斥喺我哋嘅腦裏邊，令到我哋會憂慮。
Certainly, when we go through some rocky times in our lives, that perhaps lots of questions, would comes up in our mind and make us worry.
但係有時可能我哋人生比較平靜安舒嘅時候，呢啲嘅憂慮亦都可能係轉咗第二個嘅情況出現嘅。
So sometimes, maybe in certain life situations that, these worries might, change, to something else.
讀書可能我哋會擔心我哋入唔入到某個學校，我哋想入，我哋啲分數點係咪？
Sometimes
大家
when
可能好憂慮㗎。
when we think of study, perhaps we worry about, whether we would go into a certain program that you prefer.
揾唔到工，我哋又好憂慮，但揾到工，可能我哋又會啲憂慮。
So people worry about finding jobs, but once they have a job, then they also worry.
人好唔好啊？
Maybe, would my coworkers be fine?
我嘅前路會點啊？
What is going to be like, for my future?
做下悶啊！
So after a while, you get bored, from working on the job.
10零20歲係咪跟住以後就咁啦？咁你又好多嘢諗㗎咯喎。
So you then start thinking, I'm still young, would the rest of my life, be something like this, so
結
bored.
婚，可能我哋又有我哋未結婚嘅憂慮，結咗婚又有結咗婚嘅憂慮。
Even like before we get married, we might have worries. And now that
就
you
算仔女大，你都有憂慮啊。
you worry about worrying about your kids, like, as they are growing up.
其實狼啊，俾我睇到，無論人生飄蕩嘅時候、停止嘅時候，憂慮可以不斷隨着我哋。
From Noah's experience, certainly, whether you're drifting along life or you actually stop, then, we carry a lot of worries with us.
但我相信狼啊，佢有一個秘訣。
But certainly I trust Noah, had a secret, a strategy.
個秘訣喺邊度？
And what is that tip of like running a life?
嗱，可能我哋睇聖經睇得太快啦，
Perhaps then, we read the Bible a little
你冇
too
留心
quickly.
睇第一節。
So let's go back, and pay attention to chapter 8, verse 1.
其實喺聖經裏邊一開始講，神紀念挪亞和挪亞方舟裏嘅一切走獸牲畜，神叫風吹地，水勢漸落。
Chapter 8, verse 1. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded.
當喺方舟裏邊水勢漸落，可能我哋唔知道㗎。
So apparently, the water receded when you were in such a huge ark. You wouldn't know, that the water receded.
我哋喺方舟裏邊，原來神叫風吹緊，我哋唔知道嘅。
Apparently, we were in the ark, but apparently God has sent a wind over
但係
already.
我相信一樣，
But Noah truly believed in this.
神紀念挪亞同挪亞方舟裏邊嘅牲畜。
So Noah firmly seized hold of God, remember him, and all the wild animals and livestock in the
英
ark.
文聖經譯咗一個好好嘅轉捩點 ，but
So apparently in the English version of the
Anti-gaily.
Bible, there's a conjunctive like but.
錯，隻船係喐緊嘅，
Yes, the ark was moving,
方舟停咗，我哋都會擔憂啊。
but the ark stopped and then
Anti.
the rain continued.
But-
However, but
神係紀念住我哋，神睇住我哋啊。
apparently God remember, and God overlooking us.
弟兄姊妹啊，值得我哋去諗一諗。當下一次喺你人生裏邊又出現一連串嗰啲嘅憂慮嘅情況，請你識不。
So certainly, brother and sister, I encourage you, if you were to once again face all sorts of like challenging life situations, never to forget about this.
上個星期我哋引用奧古斯丁，我哋唔可以控制隻雀仔喺上邊飛過，但係我哋可以控制雀仔唔可以喺我哋頭上捉賊。
Certainly, last week, didn't we reference that, we might not be able to control how a bird may fly over our head, but we can certainly have the control of not allowing that bird to build a nest on our head.
我哋可能唔可以控制突然之間好多嘅問題浮現，但係我哋可以唔好俾呢啲嘅問題纏繞住我哋。所以你哋識一個字，不。
So certainly, we may not be able to control things, that are going to happen to us, but we can certainly control to not let these things to bind us and to burden us. So remember
記
this.
住，當你面對緊各樣嘅憂慮嘅時候，神正在看顧住我哋，去紀念住我哋。
So, but do remember, even though you were in that predicament, but God remember, and God overseen us and take care of us.
呢個係聖經係挪亞嘅信念，亦都係聖經刻意要寫低嘅，讓我哋睇嘅時候知道神係會紀念看顧住我哋。
So certainly this is Noah's conviction, but at the same time, it's being recorded in the Bible to help us that, God remember and care.
憂慮係我哋人類纏繞住我哋一個好緊要嘅一個嘅問題。
So apparently worry, seems to be, a single most important things that really, bind us down.
所以耶穌一開始傳道嘅時候，刻意去處理人憂慮嘅問題，喺第6章馬太福音。
So apparently when Jesus first started to come out to preach, he, in the Gospel of Matthew, he truly brought this out and spoke about it.
耶穌去反問我哋一個問題，佢話：你們哪一個能用思慮使壽數多加一刻，或作使身量多加一寸呢？
Apparently Jesus used a kind of like reverse, asking us back this question, who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life?
所以當我哋憂慮嘅時候，我哋要記住耶穌嘅説話：你嘅憂慮唔能夠改變一啲嘅事實啦。
So apparently remember what Jesus said, even though if you worry, but it's not going to change your realities.
而馬太福音第6章34節咁樣話。
So in Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, verses 33-34, it said,
佢話：你們要先求神嘅國、神嘅和他的義，這些東西都要加給你們。所以不要為明天憂慮，因為明天自有明天嘅憂慮。一齊讀：一天的難處，一天當就夠。
trouble of its own. So in Matthew chapter 6, but seek ye first his kingdom and his righteousness. All these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of his own.
唔好讓憂慮攔咗你完成神嘅工作。
Not to let worry stop you from fulfilling, what God, has planned for you.
唔好讓憂慮延續喺你嘅人生咧。請你記住，當你憂慮嘅時候，即刻處理。記住，神一直睇住你。
So do not let worry, burden, your life, and you have to take care of it right away, and always remember that God to remember.
神一直記念住你。
And God always, remember you.
我話俾隔離嗰聽。
So speak, to your neighbor right here that, but God always remember you.
嗱，當我哋繼續睇段經文，我哋會問多一個問題。冇錯，我哋喺度等，咁喺度等嘅時候，我哋會做啲乜嘢嘢咧？
So perhaps you might say, yeah, okay, I'm waiting upon the Lord, but what do I do while I'm waiting?
我哋唔憂慮啦。
Okay, I'm not worrying anymore.
應該諗乜嘢咧？
So I'm not worrying anymore. Then, what should I think about?
或者我哋轉一轉，去咁樣諗，一個敬畏神嘅人喺呢一種嘅情景，我哋應該諗乜嘢？
Perhaps then, maybe for someone, who, is fearful of God, then what should we think about, under these circumstances?
如果你有留意呢段經文咧，羅亞諗咗好多嘢。
Apparently, if you pay attention to, when you read it, the scripture, that Noah had a lot of thoughts.
羅亞諗定一個撤退嘅方案。
Certainly Noah was thinking of a plan B, another retreat plan.
都唔知佢係 A 定 B。 不過佢就見到派隻烏鴉出嚟啫。
So apparently Noah, sent a raven out first.
烏鴉飛咗，飛來飛去。
So apparently the raven kept flying back and forth
直到水嘅乾。
until the water dried up.
跟住你會留意，羅亞派隻鴿子出去。
And secondly, Noah sent a dove afterwards.
你又唔好問我點解唔繼續派烏鴉。
So don't ask me, why not send the raven again?
可能隻烏鴉飛咗出去，佢揾唔到地方落地，我係唔翻嚟啊！
Maybe the raven kept flying and back and forth and couldn't find a way, to land. So, decided not to return.
我好大理由相信我，因為你對比烏鴉同埋鴿子嘅時候，鴿子飛咗出去揾唔到落地嘅地方，鴿子點樣啊？翻到羅亞那裏啊！
So apparently in the scripture it says, the raven didn't return, but the dove, he was the dove was flying back and
我
forth.
哋啲仔女唔好做烏鴉，做鴿子好啊！
They came back. So perhaps, who do you want to choose to be, like a raven or a dove?
翻嚟，
The dove returned.
第二日再放隻鴿子。
And the next day, Noah, took the dove, and sent it back out again.
7日放一次。
So every 7th day,
7日再放。
so after 7 more days, he kept sending the dove out.
直到隻鴿子擔一個橄欖嘅葉子翻嚟知道乜嘢啦？知道佢揾到一啲出新鮮嘅橄欖嘅情況啦。
So Noah kept sending the dove over and over in an increment of 7 days apart, and eventually the dove returned, and in its beak, there was a freshly plucked olive leaf.
點解龍蝦係要揾啲飛鳥，又唔揾隻大笨象出去啊？
So why would Noah send a dove, something that can fly, rather than an elephant?
或者揾隻獅子出去萬獸之王，哇咁重，一落到去啲泥扮，哇真係 浸咗咁耐水喎，一就去沉咗落去，變咗嗰啲叫咩啊？流沙啊，唔係食嗰啲，
So Noah
咁就沉咗落去㗎啦，係咪？
Noah didn't send like a lion or, an elephant because, with the land so soaked for that period of time that, maybe these like land animals, might sink all the way into the mud.
挪亞喺個方舟裏邊諗，我應該點樣一步一步去體驗我哋幾時出去？
So Noah, while in the ark, he continued to think about of all the one step at a time as to, how to move on the next day.
當隻白鴿揾到一啲橄欖翻嚟嘅時候，挪亞跟住就開始打開嗰個嘅蓋。
So apparently when the dove, was able to kind of like come back with an olive leaf, in its beak, then Noah decided to remove the covering from the ark.
跟住去望，
So he saw,
哇，乾咯喎嚇！
if he saw the surface of the ground was dry.
如果你係挪亞，你會點做？
So if you were Noah, what would you do?
走啦！
Perhaps, you would say, okay, well, let's go.
弟兄姊妹，我叫你從一個角度去諗，一個敬畏神嘅人係會點做？
So you want to think, what would a God-fearing person would do in these circumstances?
佢可以諗，佢可以用神俾佢嘅智慧去諗點樣去睇到啲水乾未？
So God, he could use a God-fearing person to see, think of ways, as to how to check whether
甚
the
至佢可
surface
以
was
打
dry.
開嘅蓋去睇，見到啲水乾，印證神自己已經將水退去。
So he could remove the covering from the ark and he could take a look and then eventually realize that what God had promised, the
係
surface of the ground was dry.
挪亞冇喐到，
So Noah, didn't kind of like move right
直
away.
至一個情景嘅出現。
And until, this happened,
第15節裏邊講，神對挪亞說：你和你嘅妻子、兒子、兒婦都可以出方舟，在你那裏凡有血肉的活物，就是飛鳥、牲畜和一切爬在地上嘅昆蟲，都要帶出來，叫他們在地上多多滋生，大大嘅興旺。
Noah didn't leave the ark right away until, like in verse 15, God said to Noah, come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, birds, animals, creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in numbers.
俾佢嘅指示。
So Noah waited, for God's instructions.
可以出方舟啦！
Now it's time to go.
哎呀，弟兄姊妹，如果你出方舟，你第一樣嘢想做咩？
So, brother and sister, if you were to get out of the ark, what would be the first thing that you would want to do?
揾翻間餐館食翻餐先。
Perhaps, to find a restaurant, like, have a nice big meal.
去旅遊下，其實可以去咗好多地方嘅，不過睇唔到啫。
To go travel right away.
弟兄姊妹，神俾挪亞嘅指示，但係你請留意，除咗出去嘅時候，神俾咗一個吩咐挪亞。
So certainly not just God gave Noah the instructions to leave the ark, but, God also gave Noah some specific instructions.
你要在地上多多嘅滋生，大大嘅興旺。
And these instructions stand as a mission that telling Noah that you multiply on the earth and be fruitful.
神叫挪亞，你要 multiply，你要 be fruitful，你要去 increase 你嘅 number。
So God shared, this mission that he had for Noah. You have to go and multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in numbers.
呢個係當佢出方舟嘅時候，神俾挪亞一個好清晰嘅一個嘅吩咐。
So God gave like Noah this very clear mission, what he had to do thereafter.
弟兄姊妹，可能當我哋 lock down 嘅時候，我哋都要諗嘅，如果唔使 lock down，我應該點樣做，或者我哋點樣為神做嘢。
Perhaps, we during the pandemic when everything was locked down, we might, be, waiting, but afterwards, you might think of like, what do we do after
希
lockdown?
望繼續 lock down 啦，係嘛？或者可能
And nobody
但係值
wanted.
得我哋諗一諗，如果喺呢啲嘅情景，一個敬畏神嘅人，佢應該點樣做？
Perhaps, in a similar circumstances that, what would a God-fearing, person, believer, would do in these circumstances?
我相信神同樣叫我哋唔使 lock down 之後，亦都同樣俾同一個使命我哋。
Certainly, just the same, after lockdown, God has given us, this mission.
弟兄姊妹，今日我哋唔使 lock down 啦，出翻嚟，我哋點樣回應俾我哋喺一個新嘅日子嘅裏邊要做嘅工作？
So certainly now, like, we are in a post-lockdown period, what would be some of the new things that we have to restart that we do?
我哋有冇繼續去完成神喺呢個時代裏邊嘅吩咐？
Have we worked, hard to fulfill, what God has appointed us to do in this generation?
Multiply, 去 be fruitful, 係 increase in number.
And not only not to multiply, and be fruitful and to increase in numbers.
弟兄姊妹，新嘅一年，
Brothers and sisters, in the new year,
當我哋面對一個新嘅後疫情嘅時代，
and now we are in a post, kind of pandemic period.
我哋而家好自由，
And now, we, have regained our freedom.
唔好再我哋點樣善用呢一個機會？
And how do we make best use, of this opportunity?
弟兄姊妹，讓我哋帶住呢一個嘅使命，面對而家呢個時代。
Certainly, brother and sister, I encourage you to carry this mission from God.
我哋每日接觸好多唔同嘅人，
Each and every day, we come across many different people.
同事或者我哋啲客人乜嘢都好啦嚇，我哋點樣將主嘅祝福帶過俾佢？
So we could see clients or other people that, how could we bring, God's blessings, to them?
弟兄姊妹，或者我哋喺每一日裏邊，我哋有冇好好為我哋微信嘅親友、我哋嘅同事、我哋嘅朋友去禱告？
So have we, day in and day out, like to pray for our family members or our coworkers, our relatives that, have not like heard of God's message.
嘅信心同佢分享 multiply 緊嘅信心。
And certainly sharing your faith with them, then your faith, multiply.
我嘅對神嘅依靠同佢分享 multiply 緊。
So I'm sharing, how I relied on God and therefore faith, multiply.
弟兄姊妹，嗱，我疫情，我估大家都已經對上網啊，或者 Zoom 啊，或者乜嘢都好啦，我哋都係 expert 嚟嘅。
So certainly since the pandemic, so we have increased our tech skill, learning, how to navigate the internet and technology.
我哋點樣去完成呢個使命？我鼓勵，無論 Facebook 又好，而家好好啦 ，Patrick 夜晚已經好快已經抌咗個講道，你試下，即係你 like 又好。 試下 share。
How are we going to carry out God's mission, in this
如果真係
pandemic?
傳福音幾簡單咁 share 咁搞掂。
So certainly, using Facebook, and
kick 下佢啫喎嚇，唔使
so
我 kick 下你先至做啊，要 kick 咗佢，咁跟住去啦。
So you can just click, and share, the sermon of the day. Thanks to Patrick, usually the same day in the evening
都
that you can
唔使
share the
copy 條
sermon.
link 咯，係咪？直情 share，你嘅 friend 已經知道。
So sharing it with your friend and they, then come to know.
知唔知我鼓勵你每一個星期試下翻去 share。
So I encourage you, every day or every week that
你
you
可以
share,
將
a
你今日
sermon.
所聽嘅同你嘅朋友去 share， 你亦都可以 click 一 click 去 share。
So certainly, you could click and then share the sermon
如果
every
你唔識
week,
share
with
咧，
your friends.
你就問阿媽，因為佢 expert 嚟嘅。
So if you don't know how, ask Mai, and she, is the expert now.
弟兄姊妹喺每一個月嘅裏邊，我哋點樣完成神俾我哋嘅使命？
So every month, how are we going to fulfill God's mission that's been instructed to us?
試下喺呢個月裏邊去留意下，會唔會有一啲嘅朋友，你試下邀請佢翻嚟教會啊？
So would there be like people, your friends, relatives that you could invite them, to come to church?
可能係你嘅同事、你嘅 neighbor 叫佢翻下教會。
Perhaps, it could be your neighbors, you could be your co-workers, you
就
could
算佢
invite
話
them to
哎呀
come.
好忙啊，我唔出嚟啊，我而家好驚啊，咁咪 share 條 link 俾佢咯。
So, even they may not want to come out in person, but you can share the link, of
試下
sermon
一個
of
月
worship
做一
to.
次啊，最少係嘛？
So
就我講
maybe,
嘅最少啊，你做多冇律法禁止啊。
maybe at
你一
least
年嘅裏邊祈禱，可唔可以喺今年裏邊，我第一個人認識耶穌？
perhaps then, this year, that you would pray for someone and bring one person like to God. You could certainly do more, but at least one.
一個污穢嘅世代，神讓洪水改變嘅時代，去到一個新嘅時代嘅裏邊，挪亞承接呢個唔係新嘅使命，翻神創世嘅使命，挪亞去落實呢一樣嘢。
So certainly, in a sin-filled kind of generation, Noah, obey and follow God's mission. Certainly not a new mission, but to actually take action and follow, God's will.
呢個唔單止係神對挪亞嘅指示，神亦都係對我哋嘅指示。因為馬太福音第28章好清楚，耶穌臨走嘅時候同我哋講，所以你們要去使萬民作我嘅門徒，奉父子聖靈嘅名給他們施洗，凡我所吩咐你們的，都教訓他們遵守，我就常與你們同在，直到世界嘅末了。
Certainly, the mission that Noah had was not just, for him, but also for us, because in Matthew chapter 28, 19 to 20, God commanded us, we go and make disciples of all nations to baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And also God instructed us to teach them to obey everything God had commanded us. And therefore, God would be with us always to the very end of the age.
從漂泊到停留，我哋要找緊神係看顧住我哋。
From drifting, until stop, we remember, we recognize that God always remember us.
等待到使命，讓我哋能夠謹記神對我哋嘅吩咐。
And to wait, for, God's mission and instructed to us, and then we obey, by taking action.
提醒我哋講，挪亞喺方舟裏邊會做乜嘢，會諗乜嘢。
Certainly, just now we were thinking of what Noah was thinking when he was still inside the ark.
我好相信挪亞喺方舟裏邊諗咗一個出嚟，第一樣嘢要做。
So I trust that, Noah thought of the first thing, he would do as soon as, he got out of the ark.
你會留意第20節。
And you pay attention to verse 20.
挪亞為耶和華築了一座壇，
Noah
拿
built
各
an
類潔淨嘅牲畜、飛鳥獻在壇上為燔祭。
in verse 20, Noah built an altar to the Lord and took some of the clean animals and clean birds. He sacrificed a burnt offering on it.
挪亞喺方舟裏邊，如果出去，神啊，
Noah got out of
呢
the
樣嘢
ark,
捉一個壇，
so he built an altar.
邊個叫佢啊？
Who told him to do that?
冇人叫嘅，
Nobody told him to do
但係呢個
so,
佢嘅心嚟喎。
but that came from his heart.
捉一個壇做咩啊？
So why did he build an altar? For what?
唔係擺喎，
Certainly not just for show.
捉一座壇喺上邊獻祭。
Apparently, he built an altar and he sacrificed a burnt offering on it.
啊，邊個叫㗎？
So who told him, who asked him
冇
to
人
do
叫
so?
喎，呢個係佢嘅心自發嘅喎。
So it came spontaneously from his heart. He did it.
哎呀，呢個真係好美麗啊！
Certainly such a beautiful.
所以你會留意神點樣回應挪亞呢個嘅舉動。
So how did God respond to Noah's action?
第21節，聖經咁話：耶和華聞那馨香之氣，就心裏說：我不再因人嘅緣故咒詛地，也不再按着我才行的滅各樣嘅活物。
So this is God's response to Noah's action. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, Never again will I curse the ground because of man, even though every inclination of his heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done.
請你留意，
Please pay attention.
聖經唔係咁講。
Certainly, the Bible didn't
耶
say
和
that.
華聞見嗰啲 smoke，
So it didn't say the Lord smelled the pleasing smoke.
咁就好開心啦。
And then,
但
he
我哋可能會啊，
maybe for us, we would do that.
香啊，話聞見，即係你唔想食，但係你聞見陣味好香。
So apparently, when you could smell the aroma, that
你哋屋企煎 bacon 好香啊，
and
不過
this
你唔中
is,
意食，
yeah, you feel good, yes,
唔係唔
this
中意
is
食，係唔夠膽食。
to like, cooking bacon, right? It smells really, really good.
呢一種舉動進到神嘅心，神以此為馨香之氣。
So apparently, Noah's action, when, God smelled it,
因為呢個係從挪亞內心發出嘅。
So because it was Noah's heart's wish, and that became an action. So God see it as such a pleasing, there's an aroma to it.
挪亞以築壇上邊獻祭，開始一個新嘅時代。嗰個時代開始有日、有夜、有冬、有夏、有四季唔同嘅情況。
It's like, when, this happened, Noah built an altar and gave a burnt offering. It's almost a new age, started. And as long as the earth endures, there's a time for things. Seed time, harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night, and will never cease.
弟兄姊妹，值得我哋喺挪亞身上去反省乜嘢叫奉獻。
Certainly, we could take after Noah's experience and meditate upon what does it mean by
我哋
offering?
嘅奉獻係因為我哋嘅責任。
Offering, does it or has it become one of our responsibilities?
定係我哋嘅要求，
Or, something, we ask?
更加希望唔係你為咗個 tax receipt。
And certainly, definitely, you don't make an offering because you want a tax
Thank you.
receipt.
每次我哋嘅奉獻 巴不得我哋好似狼一樣，從我哋嘅心裏邊獻上，讓你嘅奉獻成為一個馨香之氣。
So apparently for every time when we make an offering, it comes from deep in our hearts, then, it comes with a really pleasant aroma with it.
當啲仔開始有嘢做，我哋鼓勵佢哋要學習奉獻。
So when my, boys, started to work, that I encouraged them, to learn how to make an offering.
我好少講，
I rarely speak about that.
我同佢哋分享咗一樣嘢，
And I have shared, this with them.
我好記得我讀書嘅時候，
I still remember, when I was at school,
我聽過一篇道，
and I remember, this particular sermon, that's been written.
牧師鼓勵我哋將
And our
求
pastor-
將最好嘅獻給俾神。
And our pastor, encouraged us to give of our very best to God.
我嗰陣時有個心願，
And at the time, I had this hot wish.
我出嚟做嘢，
And after, when I came out to work,
冇人要求，
nobody had asked me.
我將我第一份 paycheck 奉獻。
I gave my first paycheck and I make it into an offering.
唔容易，
It was not easy.
第一份 paycheck，
My first paycheck
第一次咁大個仔有咁多錢喺度，
and my first time, in my life that, I would have that much kind of money, of an income.
我就奉獻俾神。
I offer it to God.
唔係因為要求，
Not because anyone had asked of
係
me,
因為 tax receipt，
and definitely not because, looking for that tax
我好想
receipt,
將最好嘅俾神。
but to give of like the very best to God.
感謝神，
Praise the Lord.
神教導我喺嗰個時候學習奉獻，
So God taught us since then, what it means, to
唔係淨係責任，
certainly not a matter of responsibility,
而係將你嘅心獻過俾神。
but certainly, more so, is to offer your heart to God.
呢個神祝福嘅路嚟嘅。
Certainly, this is a pathway that God has blessed.
我唔講，因為我唔想講出嚟，好似大家一定要，我唔係咁嘅意思。不過我想大家知道一件事，
So certainly,
當
I
你對神點樣，神一定會祝福你。
So I don't speak about much because I don't want to exert pressure on any one of you, but certainly, when you obey and follow that, God for sure,
我好感
will
恩，
bless you. And I'm
我唔
grateful.
係好富有，但係神讓我哋一無所缺。
So I'm not like rich, in a sense, but, God has not, offered me any lacking. I don't have any lackings, in anything.
耶穌出嚟講到，除咗叫我哋唔好憂慮，但係叫我哋唔好憂慮之先，叫我哋處理一個問題。
Certainly, not only Jesus encouraged us not to worry, but Jesus also, has taught us about this, very important lesson.
馬太福音第6章嘅裏邊，佢話：因為你哋嘅財寶在哪裏，你哋嘅心就在哪裏。
For in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 6, Jesus said, For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
跟住24節
And in verse 24,
話：一個人不能侍奉兩個主，不是惡這個就是愛那個，或是重這個輕那個。你們不能又侍奉神，又侍奉馬門。
in verse 24, Jesus continued, No one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money.
挪亞出嚟嘅時候，佢嘅行動係反映緊佢對神嘅心。
Certainly, the first act of Noah when he got out of the ark, Noah revealed his heart to God.
喺當中去築壇，去為咗獻祭，
Here,
為嘅係蒙神嘅悅納。
so Noah built an ark right after, because he did that because, he wanted God, he wanted to please God.
弟兄姊妹，今日我哋每一日嘅生活，每一日我哋所做嘅，你為乜嘢？
So brother and sister, for each and every day, whatever we do, whatever you're going after, what are you going after anyways?
巴不得我哋都好似挪亞一樣，我哋將心獻過俾神，而望神喺當中去悅納我哋。
May we be like Noah, that we offer of our hearts, to God, and so that
讓
asking,
我哋
for God's acceptance.
所做嘅向神所表達嘅係流露緊一種嘅味道。
And whatever we do, whatever we offer to God, may it leave, a scent.
哥林多後書裏邊提到呢一種叫做因認識基督而有嘅香氣。
So in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, and this is exactly, the fragrance of the knowledge of Christ.
亞拉臘山
So Mount Ararat,
係一個犯罪審判之後，俾人一個新嘅開始。
so it was, a symbol, a place where after Judgment Day, it symbolized, a new age, a new beginning.
我唔知今年2023年會唔會係你一個嘅新嘅開始？
So I'm not so sure whether 2023, the year
或者
stand
你嘅
as a
信
new
仰
beginning.
一個新嘅開始，或者你做基督徒一個新嘅開始。
Or perhaps, you designate this year, to be for your Christian life, a new beginning.
喺呢個新嘅開始，挪亞提我哋要謹記神睇住我哋。
So in this new beginning, Noah wanted us to always remember that God remember us.
只管聽從神嘅指示，
So just wait upon instructions from God.
讓我哋所做嘅能夠討主嘅喜悅，
And whatever we do, may what we do please God.
做一個由心裏邊獻過俾主嘅一個真真正正嘅基督徒。
And to offer, to God, what comes from our heart, to be a true Christian.
弟兄姊妹，
Brothers and sisters,
喺呢一個嘅咁嘅情況，
under, the current circumstances,
神俾我哋一個新嘅機會，新嘅學習。
God has given us a new opportunity, a new learning.
讓我哋喺呢個新嘅機會、新嘅學習嘅裏邊，能夠懂得仰望，用信心去仰望跟隨我哋嘅神。
May we lift, our eyes upon God, and continue to follow him, in
我哋
this
起立
new
唱一
beginning.
首詩歌作為回應。
So let's stand, we sing a response song here.